Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Daily Biz Link. Stacie Mallen is back, and this week we're talking about what to do when rebuilding trust. And she has a really interesting concept to share with us, talking about the marble jar, which I'm so excited to hear some more. So, Stacie, thanks for being here.
Thanks. I've been coming across quite a few organizations and leaders that have asked me the question lately. We made some early decisions in the COVID crisis or in the economic crisis, and now we really need to rebuild trust with people in our teams and our organizations. And the first time I ever read this it's from Brene Brown, the Marble Jars from Brene Brown. We have a little bit of a different flavor and take on it than she does, but the premise is the same. And that is that she tells a story about her daughter coming home from, I think it's third or fourth grade, and the teacher uses a marble jar, right? Those of us who've had grade schoolers before, they should do it in high school, but maybe they still wouldn't listen. I don't know. So the teacher would put a marble in the jar, and the story, I'll spare you all the details if you want to listen to Brene's full story. It's a great story, great connection with her and her daughter. But the story is really about how people build trust is really based on how they experience things and how they feel things. And words are just words. It's like love is just a word unless you're feeling loved and you're feeling trusted. What I think is interesting is she talks about filling up this marble jar, but what I've experienced, and I don't know about you when you've been in just personal relationships or professional relationships, I believe there are different sizes of marbles too. And so sometimes you can do things and that puts a really big marble in the jar for someone, and it's maybe unique for every person. But I think it's part of our kind of makeup as a leader to try to figure out what are the important things to our folks that will put those big marbles in the jar. And then also, what are the things that take marbles out of the jar? So I'll give you a good example of that. I typically don't have leaders, when I'm in a position to be coaching leaders, make offers directly to the people, financial offers about employment, to the person that they're going to be leading. And the reason why is that's a really big marble. People's money is really important. So just something to think about is, do you want to be the person negotiating compensation? Even if you're the person giving approval, are you really the person that you want to be negotiating compensation in somebody's livelihood for their family at the very beginning stages of a relationship? Personally, I don't think it's a great idea to negotiate comp. I think somebody should negotiate the compensation, even if the leader's the one making the offer. I think that forging that connection is really important, and making the offer and having those conversations are really important, but negotiating comp is a big marble. So that's a good example. The other thing is small marbles, right? And so you need little marbles too, because I'll go back to love, because I think there's so much equivalence to love. If your fiance brings you home flowers, it may be not a big marble, but it's a little marble. Like, hey, I love you. I'm thinking of you. I thought of you today. A text message when somebody's traveling, James is traveling today. So text message from him just to know, I know he's thinking about me. It's the same thing, I think, with trust. It's that you need those little marbles to fill up the little spaces too. You can't just do all big marbles. So I think the point is, as we think about rebuilding trust inside of our teams and organizations, really learn what people's currency is. What is their big marble? What's their small marble? And I think that's one way to just start thinking about it.
So just to confirm the whole model, so the idea is that we, as leaders, we want to fill up the marble jar as much as possible. We don't want to be the ones depleting that or taking away from it. So I think you offered some great ideas, both personally and professionally, what we could look to do to fill up those marble jars. And one thing that's top of mind based on conversation that I had this morning that was focused on building company cultures when we're working from home. And a lot of that is just showing your employees and your team members and even your family members the fact that you care and that you're thinking about them. And that goes so far. And I'm sure that ties into probably building trust with individuals as well.
It does. Those are the little marbles, right? And I think as we interact with people every day and we're immersed in their environment, I have a kiddo home today sick. And if you and I are coworkers and you know that about my life, you may not have known that if we're both physically present in an office, but it's probably relevant if I'm working from home today. And so as we are watching cases potentially, let's not get political, expand or testing, expand, whatever's happening, right? As we think about, are we really going to be full force back in an office anytime soon? The answer is maybe not. And so what are the little things? And I think thinking about that, just like you think about, I think in relationships, we should be thinking about what are the little things that the person that I love really values. It's like love languages. It's like the trust languages. What are the things that for this person helps them connect to you in a trusting way? Maybe that is holding true to your one-on-one time. That's a big one, right? If you have a leader that, have you ever had a leader that constantly cancels your one-on-one, Lindsay? Yeah. How did that feel?
Yeah, you don't feel that you're important. So I'm sure that hurts a lot of people's egos.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like I matter to you. Worst one ever, maybe is I had a leader who in his office, the computer was like in front of him. And then you sat like on the other side. So he was emailing or doing whatever he was doing during your one-on-one, and so if I ever have an office again, maybe I will physically office, like move your computer like over to the side. And I don't like to have like a desk in between me and the other person. I like to have physical space where we can feel like it's a little bit more of a conversation versus you're being talked to at the principal's office, which is, I think, the way it feels if you're like in the little chairs over there and I'm in the big chair over here. I know it seems really minor, but trust is a feeling and care and concern is a feeling. And so I think thinking about how does it feel to the person on the other side, and how does it feel to have really genuine interactions with people? So I think those are really relevant things to think about right now as you talked about building a culture. And everything has changed about what we thought about how we function as a leader. I think it's time to rethink those things too.
So if there were 2 or 3 tips that you would look to offer today's listeners, what would it be as it relates to starting and building trust? What are some small actions they can take this week in order to get started?
Set and keep your one-on-one times. Have one-on-ones and keep them. And if you can only commit to once a month, then do once a month, but make sure you're there. Hold them very, very sacred. I think that's number one. And then give the employee or your team member the control of the one-on-one. What did they want to talk about? Let them know that, like, don't spring that on them, but say, hey, this is your one-on-one. I'd love to talk to you about a few things, but please let me know what you want to talk about. I think that's really, really important. I think in the space that we are now in working remotely, being respectful of people's time, and that, again, this bleed that's happening outside of working hours. I have 4 teenagers at my house and a dog and a partner. And so we all have stuff going on. And so ask people, does this work for you? Is my communication style functioning well for you? Would you prefer if I, don't send emails first thing in the morning? Or, hey, when is good for you to have this conversation or this time? The final thing is, I came across some neuroscience a couple of years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, where people have an optimal time where they fire like on all cylinders. For me, it's like right after my workout. I get my workout in the morning and I'm like, let's go. Like I start going. Allow people to hold that time sacred. And it sounds like, what does that have to do with trust? But I think allowing a person to hold time sacred for themselves where they can feel highly productive. Again, it's about the feels, right? It feels good to get stuff done. And so ask your team, when is that for you? And I will commit to you. We will do our very best to not encroach on that time for you. I think it would feel really respectful to the person that you're leading to know that you respect their time. And so I think those are really simple ways right now in the world that we're living in, inside and outside of an office, to demonstrate and start really fostering a trusting relationship quickly.
I personally really love that idea of, conserving their sacred time. And that's a question that I personally have never even asked my team before. So we are hosting our team retreat and doing business planning for 2021 starting next week. And so that will be something on my agenda. I want to make sure that I'm asking them what is their sacred time and making sure that, they're reserving that to get their stuff done. Stacie,
Yeah.
lots of great
And
tidbits.
if they don't know, Lindsay, by the way, we can talk about how to help them identify. Some people will go, I don't know. So we can talk about in a subsequent segment, how do you define that time, help someone define. It's like asking somebody, what's your great purpose? People are like, I don't know, to get up every day and move. I don't know, like, what is my purpose? So when you think about when is my sacred time, some people aren't really that self-aware about it, but I have an exercise that I can certainly share.
Perfect. Sounds like we know our topic for next week then. Well,
Yeah.
Stacie, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.